Hello and welcome to another edition of In Between the Pages with James Lott Jr. I'm James Lott Jr. In Between the Pages. And I have an honor of talking to people who, it's funny, I saw them on TV and I saw their work and now I get to talk to them. A lot of full circle moments for me. And this person put out a book that's very, very interesting. She is a teacher, a writer, director, actor. She's done stage, TV. A lot of you know her from that huge role as Ma on that little show that lasted a little while, Little House on the Prairie. I've interviewed many of her co-stars, so now it's my turn to talk to her. Her book is coming out called Bright Lights Prairie Dust: Reflections on Life, Lost, Love from the Little House's Mom, Karen Grassle. Hi, Miss Karen.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me.
I was telling her you look great. Love the smile, love the hair, love it all. I love it, love it,
Thank
love
you.
it. Good. Your book was very good, so thanks for giving me an advance copy to read.
Oh, you
Um,
read it?
I read it. No, I read my books. I don't just like give you top
Oh,
points. I read them.
excellent.
'Cause I have specific questions I like to add. I like to be different than everybody else. So I read your book, and two things came out of it for me. Well, one, congratulations, because
Thank you.
it takes time to write a memoir. How long have you worked on this?
So many years, James. So many years. When I first started writing, I didn't know I was, actually writing a book. But I just wanted to get these memories down because they were rising up inside me. And then I got very interested in the whole process, and I said, "Geez, I'm going to try to learn to do this."
Yeah.
And I read a lot of memoirs, and I formed a group with some other people, and we've been reading and writing together now for 11 years.
Wow. So you've taken your time. You've taken your time to actually craft a memoir people can read. I thought that's
Well, I tried to get better at writing, and to understand what a memoir really is, not just, who you had lunch with and who you worked with, and
yes.
uh, to try to make something worthwhile.
Well, let me tell you, that's funny you say that because my two things about this memoir, two things, I can't do math. Two things about this memoir that hit me was one, um, you don't know who people are just 'cause you see them on television, folks. Everybody get you never know. But two, I like the style of the book. It didn't feel salacious. It didn't feel gratuitous. It didn't feel tabloidy. I know it's not a word, but it felt like you were talking to me.
Ah, good, good.
So
That's how I want it to be.
okay, good.
Like we're having a conversation, and I'm telling you some deep leveling truths.
And that's how I came across because we just you say you took your time writing this memoir to make sure it sounded like something decent. It did. It came across just like it was just like, and this happened. This is how I thought, and I met this way. This is how I thought. Because it wasn't just a name dropping thing. There's some names in it, obviously. You're in the business, but it wasn't just that. It wasn't like mommy dearest. We just like my mom did this to me and my dad did this. I mean, it wasn't. It just felt like it was a story. It felt like it was a story, and that you told your story.
That's what it is.
That's how it felt. Um, I first want to bring up it's like just it's you became really good friends with one of the co-stars of your show. That I think is just so funny that you became friends with her because when we watch on TV, you think something different. But with Catherine McGregor, who played Miss Olsen, of course, and you talk lovingly about her and funny about her in there. Does she know she? I mean, how is that friendship? I mean, it sounds like it's a lot of fun and admiration.
We know Scotty has passed now,
Yeah,
so she's gone, and her final years were not too good
yeah,
um, in the motion picture home, which is a wonderful place for actors. I mean, and other people from the industry. It really is a amazing facility. I visited her there. Um, but when we were on the show, we really did strike up a very nice friendship. And one of the reasons was because we were both really serious about acting.
yes,
And so we loved to rehearse. And so, you know, those egg scenes where Carolyn and Mrs. Olson would argue or, you know, negotiate, we would just practice so that those would seem very, very spontaneous. And it was a lot of fun to do it. And, you know, whenever I went out on the road, which I did every year for the show, everybody wanted to know, Mrs. Olson, what is she really like?
Right.
Because she was so convincing in her pettiness, you know, she was so committed to that narrow, grasping woman. And I think everybody really loved her for that because she committed fully. She didn't go, wink, wink, I'm just pretending to be this grasping, you know, selfish person. This is really my point of view on the world. And I admire that very much in an actor. And I admired it in her. And then we did some other things together, you know, like she encouraged me to take this class one summer with Stella Adler. And I went with her and we did a scene together. And oh my God, Stella just got after me. I mean, she did not like one thing I did. And it was really embarrassing because we were in this theater with all these Hollywood people.
Right, they were there.
Excellent working actors, you know, who would go to Stella's class in the summer, like going to the temple of acting. And there I was on the stage with this egg, you know, all over my face. But, you know, I survived it.
Oh, yeah, you survived. Clearly, we survived. That goes. It brings back to when you got to. You taught this in the book. When you got to Little House on the Prairie, when you got to Michael Landon, Little Joe from Bonanza. That's how we knew him. I mean, that's how everybody just knew him from that. I mean, he was the younger brother on Bonanza, which was a huge show, folks. I mean, I want people who have watched this. If you're not old enough to remember and just don't know, Bonanza was a huge hit. I mean, like it was like #1 for decades. It was huge, a huge hit. It was a huge show. And back then we had 3 stations, you know, at the time there wasn't a lot of different, there wasn't cable, there wasn't anything else. It was a big thing. So for him to branch off to do something totally new and basically different, you know, a period piece, of a different period than that period piece. You say you saw him, you thought he was cute, of course, and it was Little Joe from Bonanza. Did you know when you got there, this could be something special or coming from him, or were you just like, it's another job, we'll see what happens and go from there?
Well, I was at a stage in my career where I was very discouraged and I was thinking about going back to school and becoming a psychologist and giving up the whole thing. You know, I just was very, very discouraged. And when I went in there, I had not read the whole script. I had only read these scenes that they wanted to audition. In fact, I hadn't even seen the scenes the first time I met. The first time I met, I just, you know, showed up as myself. And it turned out that myself was exactly what they were looking for. They had seen a lot of actresses and they had not cast Ma, and everybody else was cast. The kids were cast, Victor French was cast, and they were only about 10, 15 days away from shooting. And then I walked in. So the timing was unbelievable. And then I did think, once I read it, that it would be a hit. But I thought of a hit in terms of maybe 3 years.
Oh yeah, you know, average, you know, a few seasons.
And I thought, oh, 3 years is such a long time to play one part.
Yeah, you're an actor, of course. That's, you know.
I don't want to play the same part for 3 years, and she never gets to dress up. And it's not going to get me any other good parts, you know. And then I was like, by the way, did you notice that you're broke and that you're sleeping on your parents' couch
Right.
and you're being offered a job?
Hello.
So it's not good enough for you, Karen, or what?
Like,
Right?
hello.
So I took the job gratefully and started to read the books, and we went to work.
Yeah. I mean, the rest is really herstory and history. Both. Um, now we're talking 40, 50 years at this point, I think, close to 50 years later. We're still talking about this show. I mean, I already know the answer that you didn't think about that back then. But now when you look back on it, who is Ma to Karen? Is she a sister, a friend, a cousin, an evil twin? Like who is she to Karen?
Evil twin.
Evil twin. Oh, that's like who is she to Karen?
Well, I think the opportunity to play Ma, I didn't appreciate when I started.
Mm,
And the truth is that during the pandemic, when so many people turned to television and to Little House for comfort,
they did.
I began to appreciate the depth of what this character has meant to people. And I began to get, like, when the book was ready and some people started to be early readers of it, uh, the way that they responded to help me because of this character, not because of me, because of this character, I was very moved. And I feel like Ma is still giving me gifts today because of all the people who love her. And I did work hard, James. I really applied myself. And there were a lot of ups and downs, as you know from reading the book.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm very grateful that I could hang in and that I could continue to really try to do my work, like Scotty McGregor, just do that work. Because now the rewards are so great.
Yeah, the advent of streaming services and places that are showing retro TV. No, Little House on the Prairie is big again because I had family members, siblings who were like, I want to watch something that's not about COVID. So they're going, they watch. My one sister, she watched all the seasons of Little House on the Prairie last year, and her husband.
Yeah.
And at night, after being at home all day and just kind of seeing the news, before they went to bed, they watched a couple episodes. And it was kind of warm hearted. I've interviewed, like I said, some of your actors, fellow actors who have been on the show through the years. And it's just this warm. It is a warm. It's like sweet potato pie, or it's like it's like warm, like warm three bean casserole or something. It just feels like it's. We don't have a lot of that today. You and I were just talking about Hallmark Channel One Calls to Heart, Michael Landon Jr., and I'm part of that whole world. People start going back to the original works. So I'm surprised. I'm not surprised you're getting more attention even more now than ever before. Not surprised. That's a great thing. So good television stays around. It's a good show is a good show. I think no matter what you can't do anything. I mean, they last. Last. And Little House on the Prairie was one of those shows.
Thank you.
It just lasted. And your work on there was really good. I mean, we're talking, was it almost 10 years? 9 seasons?
Well, it was 8 years, 8 seasons.
8 seasons. And some
8
movies.
Seasons.
Yeah, and some movies.
So,
Yeah, that's,
almost a decade.
Yeah. What I have to ask you because I haven't I get a chance to ask other people. What is one of a memory about Michael Landon that just stays with you? That it's just I know you have thousands of them, but it's like what is one that just stays with you?
Well, I think that this is kind of a funny one.
Okay.
We were doing a very serious scene about the baby. He's holding the baby. And we did the scene, and maybe the baby was sick. And so it was very serious. And then the scene was finished, and he threw the doll up in the air. He loved to do these kind of outtakes because when they were watching the dailies, then it would get people to laugh. And he loved to make the crew laugh, and he loved to lighten things up to try to make the work go easily.
That makes sense. I mean, he worked hard. I mean, he was producer, writer, director. I mean, he was like an actor. I mean, he worked hard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's known for that. I just always wonder when you're doing all those things, how do you like when it comes to time to act? Because he had to act with you. He was the lead of a show. He had to act with you. It's like, how do you stop being this, or how do you work that out so you can actually commit to being Karen's opposite scene partner in something? It must be really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge. And there are all different kinds of actors, of course.
Yeah.
But Mike was the kind of actor who liked to play it light and funny right up to shooting. And I think he just relied on his personality, to do it. And he was more invested in the producing and writing than he was in the acting at that point.
Yeah, and yourself, because later you did write a movie, Battered. You starred in it.
Yeah.
Starred in it. So what was that? What was that like for you? I mean, you talk about it in the book a little bit, but what was that like for you to actually sit down, write this thing and then star in it? Did you get a bigger appreciation of Michael Landon on some point, on some level of how that actually works?
Well, he was a great role model for me, because he was doing it. And so I wanted to do it.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I had this marvelous friend, Cynthia Lovelace Sears, and she was a good writer, and neither one of us were published. And we thought, we can write a movie in a week. Let's do it. And we found this subject, which was so buried at the time.
Yes.
So we helped to lift that subject up and expose it in this country. And that was a great gift too.
Well, I want to say, we have to remember this was the 80s. This was like early. This is not today. This wasn't talked about freely, right? It was not talked about freely at all. I think you guys, and then Farrah Fawcett, you mentioned when she did her movie, this was not talked about. This was completely, like you said, buried.
Right. Farrah Fawcett's movie was about 3 years later, and was a sensation. And so that also contributed to the conversation. But a lot of changes came about because of that work.
Yeah, no, it's an older. Plus, also, I want to bring up the fact, because you mentioned this throughout the book. I mean, you are a woman. We can see that you are. But in the business, I mean, we're talking at times when, because I may you mentioned Goldie Hawn, who of course had to finance part of Benjamin on her own. Like, it wasn't, women weren't just like producing stuff and just like writing and getting things greenlit. Like, I mean, it's still tough today, Lord, but back then it was tougher, wasn't it?
Yeah, and of course, women are still having to really assert themselves. But every time I see directed by a woman, produced by a woman, or written by a woman, I'm like, there are more and more, and it's wonderful to see that happening. I was listening to one of your shows with the actor, writer, the last name is Mathis.
Oh, yes.
And I thought I could really identify with him, being a performer and then finding this spark, this energy inside that has to be expressed in writing.
It has to be. It does. There's sometimes it's the writing gets it out, and I always felt like gender doesn't really matter. It shouldn't matter when it comes to producing content. I just, maybe I'm a forward thinker. I don't, maybe I'm wild and wacky. I don't know, Karen. I just always thought, I mean, just when I hear, because I was there back then. I saw it, but very few things were done. Like a woman would be let through, like one would be let through maybe here and there. But when it came to behind the scenes, I mean, like, I'm just like, they have stories just like men do. They have tales to tell just like men do. They can direct just like men. I mean, like, I never understood the whole gender. It's like it doesn't. This kind of business doesn't matter. I don't know. I mean,
Well, if it's a man's world,
right,
then if men have the power, if men are making the moves that make things change, then the men have the stories. But as we're moving more and more into the world and making our values more known, which I do think there is a difference
yeah,
in values that are, with all due respect to you, James, with the testosterone
yeah.
driven,
Oh yeah, yeah.
power driven values, as opposed to the compassionate, holistic values that a lot of women bring to the table. As that shift is taking place in the society, then women's stories become more relevant.
Yeah, and less like it's a woman's film. You know, it's like it's a, you know,
Right.
it's a chick flick, and like they say, like we need to get rid of that stuff. It's like it's a film. Film. That's why I address you as an actor. I don't say actress a lot of times anymore. I kind of stopped saying that. It's like you're an actor. I mean, I know some people don't matter, they don't care. You can call me whatever, but I feel like you're an actor. That's what you are, and that can be used for men and women. Because that's what you studied, that's what you did. You clearly have an IMDb with credits. So I changed. Language is important too, I think, Karen. I think language is very important.
Words matter.
Mhm.
And then on the other hand, how would men feel if we decided that the gender neutral way to call the acting profession was actress?
Right, right,
Why does it have to be gender neutral to say actor,
true.
right? So when I first started hearing that now we're all actors, I was like, wait a minute, no, because don't tell me that the life of an actress is the same as the life of an actor.
Mm,
There are so many fewer parts. There are so many more risks for an actress. There are so many more pitfalls. There's a whole ream of things
yeah,
that we have to take care of that men don't have to think about.
you don't. Yeah, that's true.
It just makes it harder, you know what I mean, as a profession. And so my first reaction was, no, I'm going to keep calling myself an actress
Okay.
because being an actress is hard.
Yeah. Well, then I will call you an actress. Yes, I will call you an actress. I like
but I'm easy now. I don't
that.
care. I don't care. But that was my first reaction.
You're like, just call me. You're like, just call me. That's all I do.
So now I'm okay. I'll say actor.
But no, but Karen, the thing is, in the book you talk about this. You have spoken out on women's rights and things. You do speak up. I think that's. I mean, yeah, we all meld out a little bit as we get older, right? We all meld out a little bit. But I mean, I get the fervor about that. I get the reaction. I get it. It's like, there are women who probably think the same way you do now. I mean, who are going to see this and go, I agree with Karen. I mean, I'm an actress, and that is harder, and that is something that's you don't have as much leeway as an actor does. You just don't, as a male actor. You just don't. I mean, just I mean, you talk about negotiating your contract after the first season. I mean, like things like that. We know how that go. We've heard the Suzanne Summers story and the Farrah Fawcett story. We've heard all those stories. But you mentioned it was fun. It was kind of fun to read your things about it. First season happened, and now time to negotiate. And what does that mean in second season? And you talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting to me that when I first wanted a raise, which I was told by my agent, if the show's a hit, these numbers do not stay the same.
It
You will
makes sense. Which makes sense,
renegotiate.
right? Which makes sense. Yeah.
And the show was a big hit. So I was like, okay, time to renegotiate. And Mike actually said to me, well, there has to be a parity between you and the children. I was like, excuse me?
Hello.
I, I, I went to school. I
Okay.
went to college. I had a Fulbright. I studied in London. I
Yes.
did those years in New York. I worked on Broadway. And you're saying there has to be a parity between me and these little girls
Yes.
who are acting for the first time? You
Mhm.
know, I just couldn't accept that.
Yeah. When I read that, I was like, ooh. I did. I was like, that's not good. I mean, that's not good.
Yeah, it was too bad. It was too bad that he drew a line there.
Yeah, they drew a line there. Yeah, it's just. But again, I can think it was the time period also. I guess. I mean, that's just. I mean, I hate to say that, but it doesn't make it any better or right or anything. It's like just. I mean, not evolved. That was just not. It just had not evolved at that point. To see you.
Yeah, but I had to hang tough, you know, and I did hang tough.
Yep.
And so when you hang tough, sometimes there's a price to pay, and that just is part of it,
Yep.
you know.
Yep. Women are
Uh,
difficult. Women are this and that. If they, you
right,
know.
right, right,
Mhm.
right. What a pain, you know.
It's yeah, like that.
Yeah.
And I can tell
But
you're
I
not.
was thinking about that last night in relation to the interview that I listened to of yours.
Yeah.
I was remembering how way back when I was in New York, you know, and just getting started, and I read Eldridge Cleaver's book, Soul on Ice.
Okay, yeah.
And I was sitting with a friend in the park while my dog was playing. And he said, how do you like that book? And I said, oh, it's powerful, powerful. Um, I said, it's very hard to imagine the weight of that, but I can identify as a woman. And my friend, who was a poet, laughed at me.
Oh,
Yeah, like, oh, you know, being a woman, there's no comparison.
right.
But as time has gone by and women have become more vocal, I think it's become more clear that women as a group have also experienced what it is to be shuttled to the side. Now, it's not the same.
Right.
I
Well, we
don't
get
mean
that. We
to,
get that. Yeah.
I don't mean to make an equivalence
Yeah.
because I'm so grateful for what we were learning during the pandemic with Black Lives Matter and uh, you know, it's almost like having the scales fall from your eyes to realize the depth of the racism in our country. It's just,
Yeah.
ah,
I
it's
think
been,
I think Karen, the thing I tell people all the time is anybody who's been othered, that's what we
yeah,
that's where we have the shared that's where it's shared.
yeah,
Women have been othered. Doesn't
that's right.
matter. It doesn't matter. Women were treated like second class citizens. Women couldn't vote. My mother said she couldn't get a credit card until without the permission of her husband when they first got married. That was not that long ago, Karen. That
Yeah,
wasn't long ago. I mean, that to me, when I heard that, I never knew that. She was like, yeah, they were like, you know, but you're Mrs. So and so. So the credit card said, well, my father's name is James, also was Mrs. James Lott on her card.
yeah,
That's Karen. That's crazy. I never knew that.
yeah, that explains it so well.
Yeah, see, does it though? Doesn't it though?
Yeah, yeah,
It does. So I assume so what
yeah,
you're saying, I agree with you. It's like that anybody who's been othered, treated as less than, treated as underneath,
mhm,
lower, behind, we have that experience shared together. So there should be empathy for all groups, whether they're
yeah,
Hispanic, black, uh,
yeah, it's
gay, lesbian,
identification.
different things. It just shouldn't. It should. We all once you're put over here or told to be quiet or told to, you know, then we all know what that feels like. That's the sameness we have.
Yeah,
We all know what that feels like. You and I can
yeah,
actually probably tell a bunch of Hollywood experiences. I mean, we both go, okay, yeah, I understand that one. You go, yeah, I understand that one too. I've been in business 14 years. I've had enough stuff go on that I can probably relate with you. Probably.
Yeah, yeah,
That's just kind of how it is.
yeah.
But I'm glad you said that. I like that. No, yeah, the Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, all this stuff that's coming up, it's time. It's just time. You
Yeah.
and I have been around a long time. It's time for it to come up. We can't have the same problems going on that went on 30, 40 years ago. It can't be the same
No,
stuff. It's just
no.
it's time. It's beyond time.
Yeah.
Like that.
Definitely.
Now, your book also, I went through this the niceties. It also goes through some of the other moments in your life.
Yes.
So before I even touch upon some of those, I want everybody to read the book to get all the details. We're just going to kind of touch on some of them. But was there, because you said at first you were just writing down memories and kind of putting it, but as you were putting this together, did you ever censor yourself, or you're like, whatever I write, we'll write it and we'll see what happens and where it goes in the book or not? Or were you cautious about what you were actually going to put out?
What I try to just write, just stream of consciousness, just write as fast as I could to try to get ahead of my judging mind.
Ooh, okay.
And then decide later if this is any good. But even though I tried to write that way, I found that there were whole parts of my experience that I was very reluctant to share. And that's all around sex, alcoholism,
Yeah.
depression, which I suffer from both alcoholism and depression, which I inherited from my father.
Yeah.
And it took time for me to be willing to get that out and to get out some of the relationships with men, which are initially I felt like I shouldn't protect them, their privacy, but eventually I had to commit to my story.
Yeah.
So it was almost like I had to peel the onion, to get more and more to the reality of the life.
Well, you just said something that's very interesting. You had to write before you get the judge right, because this is hard. Because now you're looking back. You're looking back. You're not going to a journal you wrote 20 years ago and then like going, oh, but you're actually looking back, and you know things differently. You know things now, right? So you've been through the other side of it, but now you're writing about. You have to go back to where it was and when it happened. That must have been very interesting for you. Go, well, I did. Yeah, I did do that. Why did I do that? Like, oh no, that's the point. That's not the point. The point is, yeah, why did I do it? I'm explaining it to people so they can read and understand, not analyzing myself, going, why did you do that? Like, what? That's so Karen. Come on, come on. Those must have been very interesting.
Well, as actors, how we use memory to feed our characters.
Yes.
So that experience came very naturally for me to contact these memories and just write. But opening some of the doors was challenging.
Sure. Now, one thing you said that you brought your dad up. I thought it was very interesting. You mentioned your dad as, and I'm semi quoting here from the book, that he was very present for his family. He was responsible. He was responsible even though he was an alcoholic. And I thought, I've never read that before in anybody else's memoirs ever. That he was devoted to his family. He'd wash. You wrote down the book. He'd wash the dishes. He would do things on Sunday. Like, you were like, he was committed to his family, but he just had this drinking problem.
Right. He had he had this disease.
Yeah.
And the disease had hold of him. So he was such a contradiction because he was a wonderful, fun, teaching father.
Right.
And modeled a kind of equality with his wife that was very unusual.
Yeah.
Like you said, she washed, he dried.
Yeah.
The dishes. And when I heard of other kids doing the dishes, I said, shouldn't we be doing the dishes? And they said, no, that's our time. catch up with each other then.
See,
You know, they didn't want us in there.
they want you in there doing anything, messing stuff. They want you in there doing anything. But
couldn't have done it to please my mother anyway.
yes, but I thought you said
But you know, this is an important thing in terms of understanding that alcoholism is not a question of character. It's a question of an illness. And it's a very confusing disease for the family. And I've done a lot of work, both as the adult child of an alcoholic and as an Al-Anon, working through the twists in my character, the hurt feelings and the resentments and the anger and the lack of trust that comes from this swing of personality in the person that you love, you know.
Yeah. Reading your story was interesting because you're writing it from the point of view of like, I knew I didn't want to become this dependent on the white wine or whatever it is. I'm trying to not drink on sets. You talk about being on set. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, and you're trying not to, but you're like, I gotta do something. The hair of the dog, as we call it, because from the night before, like that was interesting. That was very interesting. That was very shocking, interesting to read.
It was very shocking for me to find myself wanting to drink at work because I was always so puritanical about the job, about the art. I was so dedicated. And then when I had that feeling one day after lunch, I was like, oh boy, you are in trouble, sweetheart.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think that's what's so interesting. I was like, wow, you were you were like your dad in that sense when it came to work. You were functional. You were able to do your job the best you could. You gave good work, and that was your separate thing. That was over here. We don't mess with this. And then now it's starting to see that's how insidious alcoholism is.
That's it.
You can't control it. You think you're controlling it, Karen. You can't. No one can control it. Nobody thinks you control it. No.
That's it.
It runs rampant. It seeps through the pores.
That's right. It has its own clock.
Yes, has its own clock. It does. So time was up for you. Like, okay, this is not.
That's right.
This is good. You're like, no. Yes, but you talk about sex. You talk about because you came up in the free love movement was happening.
Right.
And also the 60s and 70s, and you talk about that in the book. And like, it's funny because we're like, wait a minute, she was a fully formed woman. So like, I'm looking at you as Ma Ingalls. I'm like, no, she didn't have sex. What are you talking about? She didn't do anything off camera. So that was very interesting for me, just as a fan, to read some of this stuff. And I was like, and I should know better, but I was like, oh my, I found myself turning red a few times, reading it. But thanks for sharing that stuff too in the book. Having to share that in there too.
Well, to me, it was very important, first, to be involved in the sexual revolution and to think of myself as being free and to be as free as a man is. And I really tried to do that. You know what? I just failed.
Yeah.
And I could not be free like a guy seems to be free. And I had to come to terms with that in terms of my own heart, because I bonded when I had sex with someone.
What a shame, right? Oh my God, that's crazy talk, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I had to learn to put intimacy before satisfying immediate sexual desire. And I'm so interested now to read that the young women have got a hold of this, and they no longer want to imitate what somebody showed them on porn is sex.
Right.
They no longer want to be influenced by hookups.
Nope.
I'm not saying everybody, but there's definitely this movement of self-regard and of wanting something deeper. And I was so pleased to see that, because the amount of license that the internet has encouraged. I don't think it's been really helpful for women.
Yeah, my daughters are literally puritanical compared to my generation. No, I did. No, it's really interesting. They're both married and have kids, but it's funny that they both did go they went, and a lot of their friends just said they went the opposite of the generations before them, which is mine and yours, basically, where we were just kind of like, sure, we can do whatever we want, we're free, this is our choice, we're adults. And we get, if I want to do this and do 10 people today and 10 people tomorrow, it's fine. Where they were like, we're gonna wait. Both my daughters, they wanted the one. Like, they really were like, I want the one guy. I'm waiting for him. I'm taking the steps to get to know him. Like, I was, I mean, I was, as a father, pleased. Like, sure, I'm pleased to see that. But I'm noticing a lot of them, it's almost kind of retro seeming to me. I mean, I'm glad it's happening. I still know to respect yourself and all that. I love all that. But their freedom is in that. Actually, I had to learn that's their
Yes,
freedom, right?
yes, the freedom to love. That's so beautiful.
It is.
Yeah,
I
I
just,
had to learn it from a woman older than myself because she knew these things from her experience. And so she started teaching me, Karen, you say goodnight at the door. Oh, oh,
she's like really? I'm gonna go inside. What's going on? I don't let the man in.
yeah.
I don't let the man in. Oh, really?
Yeah, because, the 60s just wrecked us in a way. We were like, all the rules were gone.
Well, you mentioned the pill, and I
Yeah.
think that's something that did change. It shifted everything. I was kind of cool that you mentioned how that affected you too. Like, that was, my mom mentioned it too, and I talked to her about it back then. Like,
Yeah,
that's something that did change the game for women. And men
absolutely.
too, but for women especially, it changed the game.
Absolutely. That was a new world.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so people start acting accordingly to that. They're like, I got a pill. That'll save everything. Not necessarily, folks. We know that also, but that did shift the culture, and now girls and women today have the freedom to be whatever they want to be on the spectrum of that. And I realized, yeah, that's the freedom for them. That is the freedom that
Mhm.
they have choice. And they can choose their desires. They can choose to be, no sex before marriage or sex before marriage. They can choose it. They can totally choose it now without shame and guilt and pressure.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
so thank God we live long enough to see that, Karen. That is very good. That is very cool. And like I
Yeah.
said, you mentioned your book about that. I thought that was very interesting. So Little House on the Prairie, cause you, I mean, like I said, you've done other things, you've done Broadway and stuff, but this of course, obviously, is just the big thing, and a lot of actors don't even get that. They don't even get a role that's so identifiable. So how
All
do you feel about
right.
that? Yeah, how do you feel about that?
Well, I feel I was very, very lucky.
Yeah,
I've worked with a lot of really talented actors, and they just didn't ever get any security,
yeah,
you know, and I did, and I needed some security to grow as a person, to grow as an artist, and so I was very, very lucky to
yeah,
get this show, and I didn't know it at the time
yeah,
because I all I wanted was to be out there doing new characters all the time,
yeah. No, right. You're
and
working.
I was longing to go back to the theater. And a lot of times we don't know um, when we're well off.
True.
Uh,
That's very true.
but I recognize now how fortunate I was, and the fact that I have the financial security that came from regular work on a series, which is so hard for actors to get, um, means I could write this book,
Right.
for example, or I can go work at this little theater in San Francisco or Berkeley and do a play that's never been done before and, experiment. That's all a wonderful freedom.
Yes, I mean, we don't, they say youth is wasted on the young, right? So we don't, it's so true. We just don't know. And in some ways I smile about it. I'm glad I didn't know everything. I'm glad I didn't know everything. It was just, we had fun. We did what we did. But I'm glad I'm where I'm at now. I'm glad that I'm in in these years, I get to now know what all that means, and I can apply it to my life as I'm going forward. I kind of like that. I kind of like that. I did, like, again, I have a nice little house. I'm doing okay. I'm like, I'm able to do stuff like talk to you, just like this. And but that comes with age and wisdom. And I I have a joke because I won an award a couple of years ago that went viral online or whatever. And I said, this is for the old guys. I did at the very end. And all the older folks came to me and were like, James, thanks for they knew what I meant by that. They're like, thanks for saying that. I said, because we value youth so much in this business and in the world. You know that, Karen, of course. But we need to start valuing people who've been around a while. I mean, like, literally, we have stuff. Like I said, we're still viable. We're still vital. We still got things to say. We still have things to offer. We're probably doing our best work now than we did when we were like, we thought we were doing our best work then. I think it's very. I support us, the older folks. I do, Karen. I love it. I love it.
Well, it's true that right now, my generation is the first generation that has their health and sufficient income to continue to be productive.
Yes.
People used to be too frail or too poor or under too much financial pressure, So now we get to have a whole new lease on life. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, I have so many friends, and older than me too,
Yeah.
who are so productive. And it's really a thrill.
It is. No, it is. I mean, I was friends with Ed Asner. He was working till he died. I mean, he literally worked till he died. He kept working, and he was in his 90s. My guy,
It's
Eric Gray,
incredible.
same thing. He's 81 on Young and the Restless, full-time storyline, working, and knows his lines. I mean, like, there's no cue cards, no teleprompter. He still knows his lines. I mean, there are people that I know in the business, that you said, who are still doing it and who are just as sharp as ever. And I think, as you and I both know, it's a muscle memory thing, of course, for actors. But the fact that you can still do it, and look good too. I mean, some of these people, they look great. You would never Rita Moreno, people like that, just out there, just like looking hot and doing great work, and supporting the village, of course, so to speak, of all of us. And I think that's we can't count anybody out anymore. It's people. We're doing good as we get longer and older. It's working. It's totally working. So I think it's great. But I want to thank you for your time. I mean, you're lovely, and I think this book is going to give people a lot of stuff to read and talk about. If you're a Little House on the Prairie fan, especially, of course, you want to get this book. But if you're good for a good memoir, just something that's good, that just take it with you, put it in your purse, put it in your suitcase, if you're traveling, whatever, take it with you and read. It's her talking to you, basically. She's just telling you how it was. And I really enjoyed it, Karen. So thank you so much.
Oh, James, thank you so much for reading it carefully and coming up with this discussion. I've really enjoyed it.
Yay, it makes my day. Bright Lights and you can see it, folks. You're watching Bright Lights and Prairie Dust. It's coming out November 16th, correct?
Yes.
So make sure you check out and get it. Pre-order it now. Go ahead and pre-order it.
Yeah, if you look at my website, which is KarenGrassle.net,
yes,
there's a place there to pre-order.
Yeah, I was gonna say pre-order, get it. But you also on your website also offer, if you want an autographed signed copy, just go to her website and find all her information. Go to Karen. I'll put it in the thing, KarenGrassle.net, and and if you want an autographed copy from her, that could, you get that too. So that's all gonna be in there. Check it out. Read her memoir. And I'm James Lott Jr. And of course, in between pages on Facebook. My channel is JLJ Media. We're all over the place. Anywhere you find your podcast, and where you find your videos, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, everywhere. Just subscribe, follow, like, share this interview with anybody you think would want to hear this and see this. Plus, I want to give a shout out to the Little House on the Prairie groups on Facebook. You guys are so wonderful to me, letting me post these things in your groups, these interviews. So thank you for letting me do that, because they care. They keep the show going. They keep the show going. They keep talking about it. Keep it going. They keep it going. So I want to thank them especially for
You.
yeah. Karen, I know Karen appreciates it too. Please take care of yourselves, and yes, read a book. Books are good. I mean, it's art. It tells you about life. So go out there and read, and we'll see you next time.